Going to start today's Daf Yomi, Baruch Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, on the bottom of 16b at the two dots around 11 or 12 lines from the bottom, where it says, Hikdir Shum Shum. So let's say you did, this is Pigel. We have a few more days of Pigel, and then unfortunately we're done with Pigel. So Hikdir Shum Shum Le'echol, Hikdir Shum Shum Le'echol, or Shum Le'echol Shum Shum. So let's say you do a Ktara, you do the mincha, you're bringing the mincha on the altar, and you did an amount that was only the size of a sesame, or which is below the amount, below the shear, or le'echol shimshum, or to eat the amount of a shumshum. So meaning to say you do the Ktara with a pickle salt, but it wasn't the proper amount. Ad shekala kometz kuo, but then you finish the entire kometz. You keep doing this multiple thoughts beyond with the pickle thought, but it was less than the shear. So Rav Chisda, Rav Amnun, and Rav Sheshes. So they have a three-way dispute. Chadam or pigel. One says that this is pigel. Chadam or palsa. One says it's not pigel, but it's still disqualified. The chadam or kosher. One says it's kosher. The Gemara says to eat it beyond the proper time, to eat the shirayim beyond the proper time. That's what makes it pigel. So Manda Amar Pigel, so the one who says it's Pigel must be like Rabbi Meir. Let's say that Rabbi Meir says that even you did improper salt with just half of the matir, half of what allows, it's called Pigel. So let's say that the one who says it's Pigel is called Rabbi Meir. The one who says it's Pasul is like the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan said if you do a Pigel salt with half of a matir, it's disqualified. And hold on one second. I have to stop all interruptions. And then Ma'ada Amar Kosher is like the one in position of Rebbe we saw earlier. The Gemara says, no, this is a totally different dispute. When does Rebbe Meir say that if you had a pigel thought on half of a matir, that was only the chishe b'shiyuro, where he had the full amount, where he's doing the full amount of the kometz, and he had an improper thought with only one of it, with only the kometz and not the lavona. Here he didn't have the proper amount. Low. And only the rabbis say it's pasul and not pigel. Because he didn't have the thought on the entire matir, on the entire both the kometz and the lavona. Here eventually he had the thought about everything going to be pigel. And you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay, fine. That's always okay. And also there Rebbe says it was kosher because he didn't go back because the half of an olive amount that he saw when he slaughtered the first sheep to eat the next day never became a complete amount. But here it became a complete amount. Maybe he would say it's disqualified here. The Gemara says, Manda Amar, so what are they arguing about? Manda Amar Pigel Divrei Manda Amar Pasul Divrei Manda Amar Kosher Divrei. It's a totally separate dispute. Manda Amar Pigel, the one who says this is Pigel would say Divrei Kasavar. What's his argument? His argument is Derech Achila Bakach, but Derech Aktar Bakach. He says it's Pigel because at the end of the day, that's the way you eat and that's what you burn. You eat a little bit at a time and you burn a little bit at a time. Manda Amar Pasul, the one who says disqualified, he says, my position is to hold by everybody because his position is derech achil b'kach, that's the way you eat, ve'ein derech haktar b'kach, but it's not the way you offer. You pour it all on at once, and so therefore it's possible but not pigel. So it's like a mincha that wasn't burned. Rambam kosher, when it says kosher, divrei kol is also according to everybody. Kasavar derech haktar b'kach. It says that's not the way you eat, and so therefore it's kosher. So it's not disqualified. Yes. Well, maybe you just pour in. You don't necessarily have to pour it in all at once. You can do a little at a time. You throw it on the altar. A little at a time, you pour it in. Amri Charife, now we're on the top of 17a. Amri Charife de Pumpadisa. So the sharp ones of Pumpadisa taught the following. Who are these sharp ones? These are, Rashi tells us, these are Efa and Avimi, were the children of Rachba of Pumbedisa. So they taught Haktara Mifagelis Haktara, that let's say you have an improper thought when you do the komets, that you're going to do the komets of the Lavona, do the burning of the Lavona, not the komets, the Haktara of the Lavona. There are two things that need to be burnt in order to allow the remnants of the mincha, the shirayim, to be eaten. The komets needs to be burnt, and the Lavona needs to be burnt. So can you do can the burning of the komets make the Lavona itself become pigel? So the Harifi the Pumbedisa said Haktara Mifagelis Haktara, it can. Mafil Rabban, even according to Rabbanan, who said Ein Mefagel Mechatzi Matir, who said you cannot make pigel with a half a matir. Hani Mili Echad Decheshiva B'Shirayim. That's only the case where you had the thought on the shirayim, which is the part that you eat, ulavona, the milsa kaima, and that's where the lavona, and in that case, the lavona remains in its intact position. The lavona is the frankincense, and so therefore the shirayim is not pigel because the lavona didn't have a pigel thought on it; it only had on the komets. But here, since he had the improper thought on the lavona itself, it's like he had the improper thought on the entire matir, on both the komets and the lavona. Amar Rava says, I agree with the Harifi the Pumbedisa. Afanan nami tanino. We have a brayta that says this. Zeakol. What does the brayta say? This is the principle. Whoever does the kamitza and puts it in the utensil, or he does the conveying, echol davar shadarko echol, u'achter davar shadarko achter, chutzla mekomo pasul. And if you do the aktar to eat something that is typically eaten, or to burn something that's typically burnt beyond the proper place, it's possible. And there's no kares, but chutzla mano pigel b'chayav and of kares. Now, what does this price say? My love, haktara dumya dahanach. Isn't it talking about a case of the haktara of the burning where it is similar to the other circumstances, dumya dahanach, meaning to say that it's similar to the other cases, the placing in the kli and the conveying. Mahanach bein lechol bein lechtor. It does in those cases whether he thought to eat or to burn the lavona the next day. It's pigel. Af haktara bein lechol, whether it's to eat the shirayim bein lechtir, or whether it's to burn the lavona the next day, it's going to be disqualified. So don't we see from here a proof that if you have a thought on the lavona, it's disqualified? The Gemara says, no, that's not what we're talking about. Lo, the Gemara says, Hanach bein lechol bein lechtir. So the Gemara says, no. Hanach, by kamitza, we say bein lechol bein lechtir. By the kamitza, it's whether the intention is to eat or to burn the lavona the next day. But by the aktara, it's la'echol and la'aktir lo. It's only disqualified. It's only pigel if you have a thought to eat the next day, but not to burn the lavona. Yosef Rav Menachos bar Gada kamei da Abaye v'Yosef v'Kamar. So Menachos, the son of Gada, sat in front of Abaye v'Yosef v'Kamar mishmei de Rav Chisda ein aktar mefagelis aktar. He says, I disagree with the Harifi the Pumbedisa. He says, well, in effect, he says that the aktar of the comments is not mefagel the aktar of the lavona. Rabbi Meir, the Amar Mefagel Mechatzi Matir. Even according to the position of Rabbi Meir, it says you can do pigel on a half a matir. That's only where the thought was on the shirayim. The komets matir didayo, because the komets is what allows the shirayim to be eaten. Avaracha, the komets love matir de lavonu. The komets is not what allows the lavonu to be brought. So therefore, this concept of pigel doesn't take effect on it. Amrei Abaye, Ani Mari Mishmei de Rav. He says, answer me. Did you say this in the name of Rav? Amrei in. Yes, this was actually taught in the name of Rav. And in Marnami, Amar Rav Chisda Marav, Ein Aktar Mefagelis Aktara. Unlike the Harifi the Pumbedisa, he says one Aktara cannot do pigel on another Aktara. Amar Rav Yaakov Baridi Mishmei de Abaye, Afanan Nami Tanina. In fact, we learned this in a braysa. Shachar Echad Min Akvasim. Let's say you slaughter one of the sheep to eat from it the next day. There are two sheep that you slaughter on Shavuos. It's called the Shalmei Sibor. And when you did one of the sheep, you slaughtered to eat from the other sheep the next day, who pigel. So that sheep that you So you slaughtered one of the sheep to eat from that sheep the next day. That sheep itself becomes pigul, but the second sheep, which you didn't have a thought on and wasn't slaughtered, is kosher. Kosher. But let's say you slaughtered one sheep to eat from the second sheep the next day, shneim kasherim. And isn't that the same case as our lavona? And therefore both are kosher because Rav argues with the Harife de Pumbedisa. My time, the key the lav matter today. Since one sheep is not the matter, it's not what allows the other sheep to be slaughtered. Well, matzim efagel, therefore can't make a pigul. So the Gemara says no. There, it's a totally different reason. You could the harifi the pumbedisa would say awesome no ikve bechad mana. There, both sheep were not in the same utensil. But here, the flour and the lavona were at one point in the same utensil, so it's like they're the same thing, and so therefore. And therefore, one Harif would argue that one Aktorah of the flour could be Mefagel the Aktorah of the Lavona. Amara, they start off, that's the way it works. You put all the flour in a utensil, you put the Lavona in it, you push the Lavona to the side, you scoop up a kamitza, and that's to be burnt, and you also scoop up the Lavona, which is also to be burnt on the altar. So they both start off as the mincha, that they both go in the same utensil. That's the way it works. So Amar Rav Hamnuna Hamilsa Ivla Li Rabbi Chanina Utkuyuli Kikua Talmudai. This teaching, this matter was taught to me or tasted to me, like Ivla means swallowed, and it's like like you flavor it, you flavor your life. So this matter was taught to me by Rabbi Chanina, and it's worthy for all the teachings. All my teachings is worthy for it. What is the teaching I got from him? Hiktir Kometz. Lahaktir Lavona. He said, let's say you did Aktara of the Kometz to be Maktir the Lavona. You said two things. Hiktir Kometz, Lahaktir Lavona, La'achol Shiraim Lamachar. To eat the Shiraim the next day, pigul. It's pigul. So my Kamashon, the Gemara says, what was he actually teaching us? What did Rabbi Chanina teach Rav Hamnuna? Aktar Mefagelas Aktara Kamashon. If he's teaching us that the Aktar of the Kometz can be Mefagel, the Aktar of the Lavona. Well, if that's what he's teaching us, like the Harif de Pumbedisa, he could have just said, Lema Hiktir Kometz Lahaktir Lavona. He could have just said it like that. And if he's telling us that in each case it was only a half of a matir, it was either the mincha or the Lavona, Lema Hiktir Kometz Lachol Shiraim L'Machar. He could have just said he did the Kometz to eat the Shiraim to Machar. And each Ravayo, and if he's teaching us both laws, Kamashwan, Lema Hiktir Kometz. He should have said it more explicitly. So what was he in fact teaching us? So Amar Avad Barava, no. Olam Kasavar, in fact, he's teaching us Ein Aktar Mefagelas Aktar. He's saying that actually on its own, improper thought by when you do the Kometz cannot be Mefagel the Lavona. And he's also teaching us on our own a Mefagel Mechatzi Matir. If you just have a half a matir, he says, I don't pass like my mayor that I can make pigul. But in this case, it's different because you have two halves that you're doing something wrong both. Once you have two halves that you're doing wrong, then I say that this machshava spread. Meaning to say you could do below the threshold a little bit and cause problem and get away with it. But once you reach a certain threshold, you're done. You can't get away with it. Tani, and then it will be pigul. Tani Tana Kamedu Rav Yitzchak Baraba Hikter Chometz La'achol Shirayim. Let's say you did the Haktara of the Kometz to eat the Shirayim the next day. I call pigul. According to everybody, that's pigul. But then we say that to dispute. Rabbi Meir says it's pigul, and the Rabbanan say it's pasul. So why do you say it's according to everybody? It's pigul. Isn't this a dispute? I call pasul. So we say according to change the text. According to everybody, it's prohibited, but it's not pigul, but it's disqualified. Gemara says, well, why don't you change the text? Lema harays that pigul of Rabbi Meir. Why don't you say it's Rabbi Meir who says it's pigul? Gemara says Tana divrei akol. Asnuye pigul bepasal michafle. They did everything orally. So the Tana, it would make more sense to say that when he switched up the text, when he didn't get the proper text, he mixed up the words pigul and pasal, rather than to say he mixed up the words hareza and divrei akol. That's not an easy mistake. But pigul and pasal is an easy mistake. Shekoyach to Gabriel. Have a great day. Have a great day. Baruch Hashem. So now we're up to the new chapter. The new chapter, which is called, they both started from that kometz. The first one is called a kometz zuta, the small kometz, and this one's called a kometz rabbah, because it's a much bigger chapter. It starts off talking about pigul, but we'll soon go into non-pigul matters, and actually we'll start to talk about issues related to safros and tefillin, and so. But we start off with more of the same. So komitis mincha. Let's say we do the kmitza. Lechol davar shein darko echol, to eat something that you don't typically eat. You do a mincha. You do the kmitza with a machshava to eat something that you don't typically eat, like for example the komitz lavona, which are not supposed to be eaten because they're supposed to be burnt, or laaktir davar shein darko laaktir, or you do the kmitza to burn something that's you did it to burn. Chutz l'zmano, you did the kmitza with the intent to burn beyond the proper time something that's not typically burnt, like the shirayim. So you had the improper thought. So then we're going to say it's kosher. It's not pigul because pigul has to be done properly, and since you didn't do it properly, it's not pigul. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer posel. Rabbi Eliezer says it's disqualified. But let's say you did it, lechol davar shedarko echol, laaktir davar shedarko achir, but you did it pachos mikazayis. The thought was about something that was typically eaten or typically burned, but you did it less than a kazayis, kosher. Lechol kechatzi zayis or laaktir kechatzi zayis, kosher. And also, if you said, I'm going to eat a half of an olive size amount beyond the proper time, and I'm going to burn half of an olive size amount beyond the proper time, it's kosher. Why? Shein achila v'aktar mitzdarfim. We don't combine the achila and the Aktara. We don't combine the two. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, my time of Rabbi Eliezer. What's the reason that Rabbi Eliezer says that even though you're doing something that's not typically eaten or burning something that's not typically burnt, it's kosher, but Rabbi Eliezer says it's disqualified? My time to Rabbi Eliezer, he's based upon the pasuk. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Vim heyachol yeyachel mi basar zevach shlamav." Says in the pasuk, it deals with pigul. If eat will be eaten from the meat of this animal by Yom HaShlishi in Parashat Tzav. And Chazal said, what does it mean that the Chazal said that if they had a machshav on the third day, it's pigul. But since it says heyachel yeyachel, heyachol yeyachel, b'shtei achilos hakasam medaber. The Torah is talking about two types of eatings: echad achilos adam, ve'echad achilos mizbeach. One is the achila of a person, i.e. the shirayim, and one is the achila of the altar, which is the haktar, the consumption of the altar, not the eating of the altar, consumption of the altar, which is the kometz or the vono. To tell you, why does it say echol yechel? To teach us, kashem shemachazvim achilas adam, just like there could be pigul if it's talking about food consumption. So too, there could be pigul if it's about the consumption of the altar. And just like the machshav disqualifies, yeah, that's exactly it. And then they're going through it now. And just like exactly right, Bill. And just like the machshava disqualifies when you thought about something that was supposed to be eaten by a person, if a person will eat it beyond the proper time. So too, if the altar eats what's typically eaten by the human, meaning to say, if you have in mind to put the shirayim on the altar, my timer. And also from the altar, what's typically eaten by the altar, if it's eaten by a human, i.e., if you have the thought for the human to eat the lavona or to eat the komets, which is not supposed to be done, but this pasuk teaches us that it's still going to be pigul. My time, what's the reason? From the fact that the Torah refers to the haktara, the burning it, using the expression of achil, which usually means eating. And so therefore, that teaches us that you're mechashev even from an altar to a person, or even from a person to an altar. And what do the Rabbanan do with that pasuk? Rabbanan, why do the Rabbanan use this pasuk? What do the Rabbanan? How do the Rabbanan explain why the Torah uses, an expression of achila for the aktara? We're on top of Yud Zayin and Beis, that to teach us the loshna ki mechashev b'lashon achila mizbeach. To tell us that it doesn't matter if he says, I'm going to eat on the altar beyond the proper time, or if he says, if he uses the it doesn't matter if in his mind or when he verbalizes it, he uses an expression of achila or aktara for the altar. Either way, it's going to be pigul. Gemara says, well, if that's the case, so if that's the case, inami machila bekazayas afaktar bekazayas. So if that's the case, there's an alternative explanation why, according to the Chachamim, it uses the word heyachol yeyachel with respect to the altar. Why you use the word achila and not aktara with respect to the altar? Or else it's to teach us, just like you're liable for achila, for eating the food, you're liable kares beyond the proper time for achila. Af aktara bekazayas. Also, the burning on the altar, you're liable if it's a kazayas. And really, it's just telling us, doesn't mean eating. It means that the consumption. That's what the Rabbanan are saying. The Rabbi Eliezer, what is Rabbi Eliezer not darish in the words like the Chachamim? And instead, Rabbi Eliezer says it's to be mechashev from the eating of the human to the eating of the altar, or the altar to the human. Why doesn't he darish in like the Rabbanan? Im kain lichtav rachmana im heyachol heyachel, or inami im heyachol yeyachel. That would really be the same. My heyachel yeyachel. So it's Shemas Min Atarti to teach us both things, both the dinim that the Rabbanon said about kazayis and achila, aktar b'lashon achila, and also the din that Rabbi Eliezer is saying, which is that you can be machashe from achila to the altar and the altar to the achila. So I'm really Rabbi. No, that is two different forms of the verb. That's why you do it. It's to say achel ye achel. But if it would have been the same exact construction, then it would have been like the Rabbanan. Two different forms.
Contrasting that with what we read earlier, which was the same construction.
That's the construction of the pasuk. That's exactly right. No, you're exactly right. That's the construction of the pasuk, and that's why he says, since it's not the same, it's to teach us both of these things. Both the din that the Rabbanan learn and also the din that he says is that it's possible if you're mechashe from a human to an altar or vice versa. Amalei Rabbi Zera Ravati Yitam the Rabbi Lazar Mishum Hachiu. If this is the reason of Rabbi Lazar, well, Karis Nami L'chayv. If Rabbi Lazar says that the whole reason is because of Heyachol Yeyachel, so why do we just say it's possible? We should just say you're actually Chayav Karis, meaning to say it's a pasuk. So pasuk means it's disqualified, but you're not liable for kares. But we should say you're liable for kares. If you want to say, yeah, you are. You yourself said, Rabbi Ati, that you're not chayav kares. So Rabbi Ati says to Rabbi Zera, I'm related to Na'i Aliba de Rabbi Lezer. There's a machokas according to Rabbi Lezer. Some say psula midiraisa. Some say it's biblically prohibited, and some say it's only rabbinically prohibited. So according to the one who says it's biblically prohibited, when Rabbi Asi says that he says there's no Enosh Karas, that's according to the one who says it's rabbinic. But there are those who say it's biblical, and I would agree with you, according to the one who says it's biblical that you're Chayav Karas. And I'll prove to you that there's a machokas tanaim according to what Rabbi Lazar says. The Tanya Shocheres Zevach. So let's say somebody slaughters the altar lishtot midamo, to drink. He slaughters the offering to drink from the blood lemachar, which is beyond the proper time. But the blood is not something that's typically that the blood is supposed to go on the altar. So the pigul thought is about eating something by a person and not the altar. So that's the case of our Mishnah, or lahakter mi basar lemachar, or to burn the meat the next day, or la'achol me murav lemachar, or to eat a murav. Again, the muram go on the altar. Kosher, it's going to be kosher. Rabbi Lezer says it's posel. But if it was just to leave the blood over the next day, not for zrika or shtia, Rabbi Yehuda posel. Rabbi Lezer, afbezu Rabbi Lezer posel v'chamim machshirim. Okay, so that's the last case. But the Gemara says when Rabbi Yehuda says in the case where you say you're going to leave the blood over for the next day and not sprinkle it or drink it, and Rabbi Yehuda says it's in that case it's possible. Aliba de man. Who is he holding like? Ilim aliba de rabbanon. If you want to say Rabbi Yehuda is speaking according to the Chachamim, we say it's kosher. Hashta, it should be for sure kosher. Hashta ma hasam become a chashem b'lachashon achila, where he thinks about it to eat the blood even with an expression of achila. Machshri rabbanon. The rabbanon say it's kosher. Hachal kochkein for sure. If he says I'm just leaving it over, it's kosher. Ella liba de Rabbi Eliezer. It must be he's going according to Rabbi Eliezer. Because it's not pigul. Pigul is only if you're according to the Rabbanan, it's only pigul if it's intending to do something which is typically done for the carbon, but the blood is not eaten as a carbon; it's sprinkled on the altar. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda would say, according to the Rabbanan would say in that case it's kosher because you're not doing a ma'isa carbon. But so who must Rabbi Yehuda be holding like? Rabbi Eliezer, who says that it's disqualified if you think about eating something that's typically brought on the altar. And Rabbi Yehuda says that also if you intend just to leave it over and not eat it, Rabbi Eliezer would disqualified. But Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer posted machshirim. And about that, Rabbi Eliezer says, even in this case, Rabbi Eliezer says it's disqualified, and Cham machshirin, it can't be. Rabbi Eliezer, Hainu Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer in that case would be exactly the position of Rabbi Yehuda. So we can't say that Rabbi Yehuda is like Rabbi Eliezer. So Elav, so what's the distinction? What must we say is the distinction between Rabbi Eliezer and between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Eliezer? They both must be arguing according to the position of Rabbi Eliezer, of Rabbi Eliezer. Elav Kare Sika Benayu. It must be that they're arguing about whether or not, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you get kares. The Rabbi Yehuda Savar Laniach Psula Ba'alma. V'hanach kares nami mechayev. The Rabbi Eliezer, the Rabbi Yehuda is of the position. If the machshav is just to leave the blood over, that's just a psul. It's a disqualification, but it's not a pigul. So it's no kares. But to eat it beyond the proper time, to eat the blood, that will be kares nami mechayev. Rabbi Yehuda would say, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you're also liable for kares. Rabbi Eliezer or Meimar, idi pasal ve'imel kares. And Rabbi Eliezer would say they're both disqualified and there's no kares. And so that's the position of Rebbe. And so we see there's Ravasi that there's a machokas tanoim. Basically, there's a machokas amoraim about what Rabbi Eliezer's position is if you're chayav kari. In this case, the Gemara says no, that's not the case. Kuli alma karis leika. Even Rabbi Yehuda would say, according to Rabbi Eliezer, there's no karis even if you thought to drink it beyond the proper time. Vacha shalosh machokas bedavar. In this price, there's a three-way dispute. Tanakama Savar, the Tanakamas of the position, the first Tana, the Brisa, who says, the first Tana of the Brisa, who says that you slaughter to eat it the next day, or to eat the blood the next day, or to burn the altars the next day, it's kosher. So Tanakama, the first Tana Savar, Bahanach Pligli, says, they're only arguing in these cases, when you change from Achila, when you use that expression, and that's where Rabbi Eliezer says it's disqualified, maybe you're going to come to even allow it in case of achila normally. Laniach, but if you use the expression of laniach, the kol kosher. So according to Hanacha, everybody would be kosher. But Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yehuda's of the position. V'hanach, Puigi, that they argue in the case of Achila, Laniach, Divrei Kol Pasal. But if they say to Anocha, everybody would say it's Pasal. Even the Rabbanon would say it's disqualified. My timer, there is Mixas Damo Atu Kol Damo. Because we're concerned that if you put portion of it, hold on one second. We're in the top of Yirchas Samad Aleph, the top of Yirchas Samad Aleph. Because we say Gzeras Mixas Damo Atu Kol Damo. We're concerned you might leave over a portion of the blood because of all the blood. There's a concern that maybe you're going to allow it even if you leave all the blood for the next day. And Kol Damo Psula Deoraisa. And all the blood is a biblical prohibition. The Tanya Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Iatem Modim Lisheminichu Machar Pasal, Chishev Anichu Machar Nami Pasal. Don't you agree with me that if you left all the blood for the next day, you can't do the sprinkling because the blood is disqualified? So too, if you have anacha to leave it, it's disqualified. But also, Rebbe Eliezer comes along and says, Rebbe Eliezer posel v'chachamim machshirim, and apazu, that even if he said, I'm going to leave a portion of the blood, Rebbe Eliezer would be disqualified chacham machshirim. From the end, we're going to say that everybody says that he doesn't get kares. So we haven't answered the question according to Rabbi Eliezer why you don't get kares there. And And the dispute is about leaving over the blood, which we'll pick up, God willing, in the next daf. And then we have one more Amud of Pigo, and then I think we're pretty much moving on. So Baruch Hashem, that's today's daf, and tonight, God willing, we'll do the daf at 5:30.